It was a quiet autumn evening in October 1985, when 24-year-old Natalie Harper left her part-time job at a local grocery store in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Natalie was known for her bright smile, her dedication to school and work, and her involvement in a neighborhood youth program. She had plans to meet a friend for dinner and then walk home along familiar streets, a routine she had followed countless times. That night, however, she never arrived. Her disappearance was noticed when her roommate, Claire Jennings, realized Natalie hadn't returned by midnight. Initially, it was dismissed as a late night with friends, but when Natalie failed to respond to repeated phone calls, Claire's concern escalated. The following morning, Natalie's parents, Richard and Elaine Harper, filed a missing person report with the Milwaukee Police Department. Detective James O'Connor was assigned to the case, recognizing immediately that Natalie's disappearance was unusual. Reliable, cautious, and careful by nature, Natalie had left no note, no belongings aside from her bag, and no indication she planned to be gone. The early investigation faced significant challenges. In 1985, surveillance cameras were rare, and Milwaukee streets were sparsely covered. Witness accounts were scarce, with only vague recollections. A man standing near the grocery store, a dark sedan driving slowly along a side street, and a shadowy figure seen near the alley where Natalie was last expected to walk. Detective O'Connor carefully documented every piece of information, understanding that even seemingly minor details could prove critical. Natalie's family became central to the search. Flyers were posted across Milwaukee. Local radio and newspapers ran stories, and volunteers combed neighborhoods, parks, and alleyways. Days stretched into weeks with no sign of Natalie, leaving her parents, friends, and the community in anxiety and uncertainty. As months passed, the trail grew colder and the case slipped into the shadow of unresolved disappearances. For decades, Natalie's disappearance remained unsolved, leaving a lasting shadow over the Harper family. In 2025, the Wisconsin State Cold Case Unit reopened the investigation. Detective Laura Mitchell, recognized for her methodical and precise approach, reviewed all preserved files, notes, photographs, and physical evidence. Items previously deemed inconclusive, fibers, hair fragments, and partial fingerprints, were re-examined using modern forensic methods. DNA analysis became a turning point. Hair fragments preserved from the original investigation were successfully sequenced. Partial fingerprints were checked against national databases, revealing a match to Ethan Caldwell, a man with a history of prior offenses in the Milwaukee area. Caldwell had lived and worked near the route Natalie would have taken home, placing him in proximity at the critical time. Witnesses from 1985 were re-interviewed using cognitive enhancement techniques designed to recover faded memories. A neighbor recalled a tall man near the alley behind the grocery store shortly after Natalie left. A delivery driver remembered a dark sedan parked nearby, the driver seemingly observing the area. Though memories had faded over 40 years, consistent accounts reinforced forensic evidence, strengthening the connection to Caldwell. Investigators reconstructed Natalie's final movements. She had left the store at 7:45 p.m., intending to walk home along her usual path. Caldwell's whereabouts were confirmed through employment records, residential data, and neighborhood accounts, placing him in the area multiple times that evening. Each confirmed location formed a pattern investigators analyzed to understand the sequence of events. Investigators searched Caldwell's former residences and storage facilities. Clothing and personal items recovered contained fibers matching those collected from the alley. Hair fragments matching Natalie's DNA were discovered among his possessions. Each individual piece was minor, but collectively they created a compelling link to her disappearance. Interrogation was conducted with careful strategy. Detective Mitchell presented Caldwell with the collected evidence: DNA matches, fiber comparisons, fingerprints, and corroborated witness statements. He initially denied involvement, claiming his presence in the area was coincidental. Investigators noted inconsistencies and hesitations in his statements. Confronted with overwhelming evidence, Caldwell admitted being near Natalie but attempted to minimize his actions. Spatial analysis became a critical tool. Investigators mapped Caldwell's movements alongside Natalie's reconstructed path, highlighting intersections supported by witness accounts and forensic evidence. Behavioral patterns from Caldwell's past, including previous offenses and suspicious activity, helped contextualize his presence and potential involvement. Community involvement was vital. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues provided personal memories of Natalie's routines, habits, and character. Their recollections validated witness statements and helped investigators interpret forensic findings within the context of her life. The investigation remained focused on Natalie as a person, not merely a missing person case. All forensic evidence underwent meticulous re-examination. DNA was retested for accuracy, fibers independently verified, and fingerprints analyzed using modern technology. Every item was documented to ensure it could withstand scrutiny in court, reinforcing the credibility of the investigation. Investigators also reviewed Caldwell's activities in the days surrounding Natalie's disappearance. Employment records, communications, and location data were cross-referenced with witness statements and physical evidence, confirming multiple opportunities for him to encounter Natalie. The Cold Case Unit organized findings for prosecutorial review. Visual reconstructions, maps, and chronological timelines illustrated the sequence of events, allowing investigators and jurors to follow the case logically. The narrative emphasized both scientific accuracy and the human story behind Natalie's disappearance. Community engagement continued. Residents organized remembrance events, shared lingering details, and maintained attention on the case. Their support reinforced the importance of persistence in solving long unsolved cases and highlighted the role of the community in supporting justice. Natalie's parents, Richard and Elaine Harper, provided critical insights into her habits, routines, and character. Their knowledge validated witness statements, aligned with physical evidence, and emphasized the human impact of the case, showing the importance of finally resolving it after decades of uncertainty. Investigators systematically considered alternative explanations for Natalie's disappearance. Coincidence, misidentification, and accidental evidence transfer were carefully ruled out through cross-referencing witness accounts, forensic data, and reconstructed timelines. The combination of DNA, fiber matches, fingerprint analysis, and corroborated witness testimony produced a coherent narrative, leaving minimal doubt. Detective Mitchell reflected on the importance of diligence. Every note, every fiber, every statement mattered. Even decades later, they form the foundation for uncovering the truth. Her approach exemplified the Cold Case Unit's philosophy. Persistence, scientific rigor, and methodical investigation could bring justice to cases long considered unsolvable. By 2025, investigators had compiled a fully verified case against Ethan Caldwell. Every aspect of Natalie Harper's disappearance was reconstructed and corroborated. Physical evidence, behavioral analysis, witness testimony, and Caldwell's partial admissions formed a compelling, legally robust case ready for prosecution. Natalie's story, once obscured by uncertainty, was illuminated through modern forensic science, persistence, and community collaboration. Preserved evidence, re-examined using advanced techniques, transformed a decades-old cold case into a pathway toward justice. The narrative emphasized both scientific precision and the human story behind her disappearance. The reconstructed timeline, combined with witness accounts and forensic findings, provided a clear chronological sequence of events. Jurors would later be able to follow the investigation logically, understanding how each piece of evidence linked Caldwell to Natalie and how events unfolded that night. Through tireless dedication, the Cold Case Unit not only identified a suspect but reconstructed the events surrounding Natalie's disappearance in extraordinary detail. Every investigative step was carefully documented, ensuring that when the case reached the courtroom, justice could be delivered with integrity and clarity. Natalie Harper's story demonstrated that even when a disappearance seems unsolvable, persistence, modern forensic methods, and community vigilance can bring truth to light. Families, investigators, and communities contributed collectively, ensuring no detail was overlooked and every lead thoroughly explored. By combining historical evidence with modern investigative techniques, the cold case unit transformed uncertainty into accountability, providing long overdue closure. Once Ethan Caldwell was identified as a person of interest, the Wisconsin State Cold Case Unit intensified its investigation. Detective Laura Mitchell meticulously reviewed every preserved piece of evidence, reconstructing the night of October 12, 1985. Despite the passage of 40 years, careful preservation allowed investigators to assemble a detailed timeline that would later prove critical in court. Caldwell's movements were analyzed using employment records, residential histories, and neighborhood accounts. Witnesses from 1985 were re-interviewed using cognitive enhancement techniques designed to recover fading memories. A neighbor recalled a tall man standing near the alley behind the grocery store shortly after Natalie had left. A delivery driver described a dark sedan parked on a nearby street, its driver observing the area intently. While memories were faint, the consistency of these accounts aligned with forensic evidence, reinforcing Caldwell as the primary suspect. Physical evidence became central to the case. Fibers collected from the alley matched clothing previously owned by Caldwell. Hair fragments preserved from the original investigation were successfully sequenced, confirming they belonged to Natalie. Partial fingerprints re-examined with modern technology placed Caldwell at key locations along Natalie's route home. Individually, each piece of evidence might appear minor, but together they formed a compelling chain linking him to her disappearance. Investigators conducted a thorough search of Caldwell's former residences and storage facilities. Clothing and personal items were recovered, containing fibers consistent with those collected near the alley. Hair fragments matching Natalie's DNA were found among his possessions. Each individual item might have been dismissed in isolation, but collectively they built a convincing connection. Interrogation was approached with strategic care. Detective Mitchell presented Caldwell with the DNA matches, fiber comparisons, fingerprints, and corroborated witness accounts. Caldwell initially denied any involvement, claiming that his presence in the area was coincidental. Investigators observed hesitations, inconsistencies, and subtle signs of deception in his statements. Confronted with mounting evidence, Caldwell admitted to being near Natalie, but attempted to minimize his involvement. Spatial analysis became critical. Investigators mapped Caldwell's movements alongside Natalie's reconstructed route, highlighting intersections supported by witness accounts and forensic findings. Behavioral patterns from Caldwell's past, including prior offenses and known suspicious activity, provided context, explaining how he could have encountered Natalie during her final walk. Community input remained vital. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues shared personal recollections of Natalie's habits, routines, and personality. Their insights validated witness statements and helped investigators interpret forensic findings within the context of her daily life. The investigation maintained focus on Natalie as a person, not just a missing person case. Forensic evidence underwent meticulous re-examination. DNA was retested for accuracy, fibers independently verified, and fingerprints analyzed using modern technology. Detailed documentation ensured that each item could withstand scrutiny in court, reinforcing the credibility of the investigation. Investigators also scrutinized Caldwell's activities in the days surrounding Natalie's disappearance. Employment records, communication logs, and residential data were cross-referenced with witness statements and physical evidence, confirming multiple opportunities for him to encounter Natalie. Each link strengthened the case against him and eliminated alternative explanations, The cold case unit organized findings for prosecutorial review. Visual reconstructions, chronological timelines, and maps illustrated the sequence of events, enabling investigators and later jurors to follow the case logically. The narrative emphasized both the scientific rigor and the human story behind Natalie's disappearance. Community engagement continued to play a pivotal role. Residents organized remembrance events, shared lingering details, and maintained public attention on the case. Their involvement highlighted the importance of persistence and community support in resolving long unsolved cases. Natalie's parents, Richard and Elaine Harper, provided critical insight into her habits, routines, and personality. Their testimony aligned with witness statements and physical evidence, emphasizing the human impact of the case and highlighting the necessity of finally achieving closure after decades of uncertainty. Investigators systematically considered alternative explanations. Coincidence, misidentification, and accidental transfer of evidence were carefully ruled out through cross-referencing witness accounts, forensic data, and reconstructed timelines. The combination of DNA, fiber, and fingerprint evidence, corroborated by witness testimony, created a coherent narrative, leaving little room for doubt. Detective Mitchell reflected on the investigation. Every fiber, every note, every statement mattered. Even after decades, these details formed the foundation for uncovering the truth. Her approach exemplified the cold case unit's philosophy: meticulous persistence, scientific rigor, and methodical investigation could bring justice to cases long considered unsolvable. By 2025, investigators had compiled a fully verified case against Caldwell. Every aspect of Natalie Harper's disappearance was reconstructed and corroborated. Physical evidence, behavioral analysis, witness testimony, and Caldwell's partial admissions combined into a compelling, legally robust case ready for prosecution. Natalie's story, once obscured by decades of uncertainty, was illuminated through modern forensic science, persistence, and collaboration between investigators and community members. Preserved evidence, re-examined with advanced methods, transformed a cold case into a path toward justice. The narrative highlighted both scientific precision and the human story behind her disappearance. The reconstructed timeline, combined with witness accounts and forensic findings, created a clear chronological sequence of events. Jurors would later be able to follow the investigation logically, understanding how each piece of evidence linked Caldwell to Natalie and how the events of that night unfolded. Through tireless dedication, the cold case unit not only identified a suspect but reconstructed Natalie's final hours in extraordinary detail. Every investigative step preserved the integrity of the case, ensuring that when it reached the courtroom, justice could be delivered with clarity and confidence. Natalie Harper's story demonstrated that even decades-old disappearances could be resolved. Persistence, modern forensic methods, and community involvement could illuminate the truth, providing long-overdue closure. Families, investigators, and communities contributed collectively, ensuring no detail was overlooked and every lead thoroughly explored. By combining historical evidence with modern investigative techniques, uncertainty was transformed into accountability. The Milwaukee courthouse was filled with anticipation, a mixture of grief, hope, and decades-long yearning for closure. Friends, family, and community members packed the benches, carrying the weight of uncertainty that had lingered since 1985. In the front row, Richard and Elaine Harper sat side by side, their faces etched with the sorrow and tension of years spent wondering about their daughter, Natalie. After 40 years, the resolution of her disappearance was finally within reach. The trial opened with the prosecution emphasizing Natalie Harper's humanity. She was remembered not only as a missing person but as a vibrant, dedicated young woman whose life had touched friends, neighbors, and the local community. Testimonies highlighted her volunteer work with youth programs, her dedication to school and her part-time job, and her warm, caring nature. The narrative focused on the loss of a life, the grief endured by her family, and the tireless efforts of the community that refused to forget her. Detective Laura Mitchell presented a reconstructed timeline of October 12, 1985. Natalie left the grocery store at 7:45 p.m., walking her usual route home. Caldwell's confirmed presence along her path, verified through employment records, residential data, and corroborated witness statements, placed him in proximity at the critical time. Visual reconstructions illustrated her route, key locations where evidence was recovered, and Caldwell's movements, providing jurors with a detailed understanding of the night in question. Forensic experts presented the modern analyses that had revived the case. Dr. Marcus Leland explained fiber matches connecting Caldwell's clothing to the alley behind the grocery store. Hair fragments preserved for decades were confirmed through DNA testing to belong to Natalie. Partial fingerprints recovered from surfaces near the alley were re-examined with advanced technology, placing Caldwell at key locations. Each expert emphasized that careful preservation and modern techniques had turned once inconclusive evidence into decisive proof. Witnesses from 1985 returned to testify. A neighbor described seeing a tall man near the alley shortly after Natalie left the store. A delivery driver recalled a dark sedan parked nearby with its driver observing the area. Although these memories were decades old, their consistency, when combined with forensic evidence, reinforced Caldwell's involvement and helped jurors understand the sequence of events. The defense sought to create doubt, questioning the reliability of decades-old memories and preserved evidence. They suggested fibers and hair could have transferred innocently, and that witness recollections might be flawed. The prosecution countered with meticulous documentation, independent verification of forensic evidence, and enhanced witness statements, leaving jurors with a coherent, evidence-backed understanding of the case. Richard and Elaine Harper provided moving testimony about Natalie's daily routines, habits, and character. Richard described her conscientious and careful nature, her predictable routes, and her routines. Elaine shared stories of Natalie's interactions with friends, neighbors, and colleagues. Their testimony reminded the court that this case concerned the loss of a real life, not merely a set of facts, and reinforced the human cost of the crime. Behavioral analysis of Caldwell added context. Prior offenses, patterns of suspicious behavior, and documented loitering incidents were presented to show how he could have encountered Natalie during her walk home. While not direct evidence of the crime itself, these insights helped the jury understand the plausibility of his involvement. Evidence was presented visually, including maps, timelines, and reconstructions that illustrated how Caldwell's movements intersected with Natalie's route and aligned with forensic findings. Jurors could follow the sequence logically, seeing how DNA, fiber, fingerprint, and witness testimony converged into a cohesive narrative. Caldwell's repeated denials were addressed methodically. Inconsistencies between his statements and the verified evidence were highlighted. Each fiber match, DNA result, and fingerprint link reinforced the prosecution's case, leaving little room for doubt. After days of testimony, the jury began deliberations. They carefully reviewed forensic reports, witness statements, maps, and reconstructed timelines, cross-referencing details to ensure a fair and informed verdict. Hours later, the foreperson read aloud, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Ethan Caldwell, guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping." The courtroom erupted in emotion. Richard and Elaine Harper wept openly, relief mingled with sorrow. For decades, they had endured uncertainty, grief, and unanswered questions. Now justice had been served. Friends and community members quietly celebrated, acknowledging the perseverance and dedication that had kept Natalie's story alive. The resolution of the case resonated beyond the courtroom. Local and national media highlighted the power of modern forensic science, the importance of preserving evidence, and the dedication of law enforcement and families in solving cold cases. Memorial services celebrated Natalie's life, her contributions to the community, and her enduring impact on friends and family. Richard and Elaine Harper became advocates for cold case awareness. Speaking publicly about evidence preservation, persistence, and the value of modern forensic techniques, they inspired other families, showing that even decades-old mysteries could be solved. Their efforts emphasized the power of community engagement, vigilance, and hope. The Milwaukee Police Department incorporated lessons from the case. Protocols for evidence preservation, interagency collaboration, and systematic review of unresolved cases were strengthened. Natalie Harper's case became an exemplar of how decades-old evidence, when preserved and analyzed with modern techniques, could bring perpetrators to justice. Natalie's legacy extended beyond the courtroom. Scholarships, youth mentorship programs, and community arts initiatives were established in her memory. Friends and family organized events to celebrate her life, ensuring that her story continued to inspire and leave a positive mark on the community. Her story became a symbol of perseverance, hope, and the enduring pursuit of justice. Detective Laura Mitchell reflected on the case. Time does not erase the truth. Every note, every fiber, every witness statement mattered. Even decades later, these details formed the foundation for uncovering the truth. Her words captured the broader significance of the case and highlighted the lasting importance of diligent cold case investigations. The streets of Milwaukee, once silent witnesses to Natalie's disappearance, now symbolized resilience, justice, and closure. Collaboration between law enforcement, family, and community ensured her memory was honored, and the truth emerged, even after decades of uncertainty. The uncertainty that had shadowed the Harper family for 40 years was finally replaced with clarity. The resolution of Natalie Harper's case demonstrated that persistence, modern forensic science, and community engagement could overcome time and doubt, ensuring that no crime remained unresolved. Families, investigators, and communities were reminded that dedicated effort could illuminate even the darkest pasts. Natalie Harper's story is a testament to hope, perseverance, and the enduring power of justice. Her life, contributions, and the tireless efforts of those who refuse to forget ensured that her story would inspire others to continue seeking truth, preserving memory, and holding perpetrators accountable. Through her legacy, it became evident that time may pass, but justice can prevail, and the lives of victims will never be forgotten.